This is VOA Africa.
Hello, I'm Esther Githui-Ewart. It's Tuesday, May 18th. Welcome to Africa 54. We continue to work remotely because of the COVID-19 pandemic, but what hasn't changed is our commitment to bringing you the latest and most important news from the African continent and around the world. This is today's Africa 54. The world has reached a situation of vaccine apartheid and was no longer just at risk of that status, according to World Health Organization Director General Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus. Speaking on Monday, Tedros said high-income countries account for 15% of the world's population, but have 45% of the world's vaccines. However, lower and middle-income countries account for almost half of the world's population, but have received just 17% of the world's vaccines.
Even now, some high-income countries are moving to vaccinate children and adolescents, while health workers, older people, and other at-risk groups around the world remain unvaccinated. The consequences are clear to see. Cases and deaths from COVID-19 globally remain at or near record highs, and new variants threaten to unravel the gains we have made. The basic problem is a lack of sharing, so the solution is more sharing.
Earlier, he called on COVID-19 vaccine manufacturers to make shots available to the COVAX vaccine sharing facilities sooner than planned due to a supply shortfall left by Indian export disruptions. South Africa launched a new phase of its vaccination scheme this week, rolling out vaccines to the over 60 crowd. VOA's Anita Powell reports from Johannesburg.
The work begins in earnest now as South Africa launches its second phase of vaccinations. The vaccine rollout began Monday for those over 60 years old. Health Minister Dr. Zweli Mkhize says the nation expects to receive more than 1.3 million doses of the Pfizer vaccine by the end of the month.
We know that everyone has been very anxious to know what will happen tomorrow and how we will start to vaccinate our most vulnerable citizens and then move on to vaccinating the general population.
Those over 40 years of age will be eligible for vaccines in July, and everyone over the age of 18 will be eligible in November. The government hopes to have 40 million people, the estimated number to achieve herd immunity, vaccinated by February 2022. South Africa's vaccination campaign has had some major setbacks as the nation reversed course on plans to use the AstraZeneca vaccine after studies indicated it might not be fully effective against the variant of the virus that is dominant in South Africa. Also, health workers say even their vaccination process has been far from smooth.
It's chaos. The traffic is a nightmare getting in here. I heard this morning that the staff also had difficulties getting in. As you can see, the traffic behind you, it's been like this since yesterday. Queues everywhere of everyone parking outside, inside, just trying to get in and trying to get on the Sisonke trial and trying to get their vaccinations.
Sharon Flint is nursing manager for 15 Johannesburg area elder care homes with about 4,500 residents. While she agrees that the nation's vaccine rollout took longer than she had hoped, she says she's glad it's ramping up now.
We're in regular contact with the Department of Health because they're going to be actually coming to the homes and the care centres for Methodist homes and all the other homes in South Africa. And we've trained our nurses in vaccinating, so we've got our sites ready.
She said that it has been a tough year for her residents here. Some have succumbed to COVID, while others have struggled with the isolation during lockdowns. Flint's 92-year-old mother is in a care facility, and they're planning for the day she is fully vaccinated and can go out.
I'm going to take her out for breakfast. She can have chocolate for breakfast if she wants to. She can do whatever she likes, just to put my arms around her and hug her. So I think it's going to be such a celebration.
That scene is likely to be repeated, with or without the chocolate, across the Rainbow Nation in coming months, as South Africa's elderly get this essential protection. Anita Powell, VOA News, Johannesburg.
In a peer-reviewed research published recently in the American Journal of Therapeutics, a group of medical and scientific experts from the United States and around the world have concluded that ivermectin is an effective prevention and treatment for COVID-19. Since 2020, the drug has been used in some countries to fight the coronavirus in patients. However, the move has led to some controversy as many experts disagree with its efficacy and safety for COVID-19. For more on the subject, Africa 54 health correspondent Manoor spoke to Dr. Pierre, Kory, Chief Medical Officer of the Frontline COVID-19 Critical Care Alliance.
Ivermectin is a very well-known medication, known really for combating parasites. In fact, it's sort of a very famous medication because it transformed the health status of a good portion of the globe after it was invented. The discoverers won the Nobel Prize. It eradicated these endemic parasitic infections from much of Africa, Southeast Asia, South America. So it's a highly effective antiparasitic. What's been known for about 10 years, it also has this tremendous activity against numerous viruses. Multiple studies over about 10 years show that it works against Zika and dengue and West Nile, all in the lab. There's not good clinical data yet on those viruses, but certainly it's known now as an antiviral agent.
What drew your attention to ivermectin in fighting COVID-19?
So the organization I'm a part of, it's a close group of colleagues. We're some of the most highly published physicians in our specialties. And we got together and we've just studied every aspect of COVID that we could for our patients. We've really closely followed all the trials around a number of therapeutics. And around October, Professor Marek, my colleague and a mentor, he kind of founded our group. He saw what I would call a signal around ivermectin. Many people have been talking about ivermectin since the spring and summer, but he started to see the first set of trials which kind of broke free from all of the other trials, which is so many of the other things that we've studied are really have very unsatisfying results, but ivermectin was like consistently positive in those first few trials.
What were the results in a nutshell?
Just in the randomized controlled trials alone, you see repeated results showing dramatic reductions in death rates. So survival is greatly increased when you use ivermectin. The need for hospitalization is greatly decreased. The time to recovery is greatly decreased, as well as the time until viral clearance. And so that's just in the treatment trials. There's a whole other set of trials which looks at prevention. You know, ivermectin, it attaches to what's called the spike protein, and it prevents entry. And so patients who are on ivermectin, this has been shown in country-by-country analysis as well, in many of the countries where they have routine ivermectin prophylaxis, the case rates and deaths are far lower than in other countries. And you see that in the trials. People who take ivermectin regularly, their chances of getting COVID are oftentimes in the low single digits, and then sometimes in the trials that show when you take it every week, nobody gets COVID. And so it's pretty dramatic results in the prevention as well as the treatment.
What is your reaction to the WHO's recommending people not to use ivermectin for COVID?
That is really the problem that my group and other groups are trying to address. There are many critical therapies that are not being recognized. Ivermectin is just one example, but we know of a number of effective therapies that are not given the attention they deserve and or the research and support and guidance.
Your group believe that ivermectin can end the pandemic. At least that was a part of the statement that was released. How so? And isn't it a bit ambitious?
If you look at Mexico right now, compared to December, when they started a national test and treat strategy centered around ivermectin, their hospitals were full and overrunning. They were in what is essentially a humanitarian crisis, the same state that India is in now. And if you look at Mexico, and you look at their occupancy data of the hospitals are empty. They have 25% occupancy. We're seeing it play out in a number of countries. Panama is the same. Czech Republic, Slovakia, all of them are showing these dramatic reductions in deaths and hospitalization. So it's a highly effective treatment.
So it's about diversifying the tools, actually.
Oh, you need more than the vaccines, right? So first of all, huge parts of the world are not going to see vaccines for quite some time. The efficacy of the vaccines against maybe developing variants is of a question. And there's also lots of vaccine hesitancy. The vaccines need another tool. We think that this is a bridge to vaccination as well as a safety net.
So when you see what's happening in India, how do you feel?
I feel saddened that this information is not available. Now, that's changing. So if you look at what's happening in India this week, already two large states, so the state of Goa and Karnataka, they have already approved a test and treat strategy Uttar Pradesh, which is the most populous state in India, 234 million people, they're one of the most best performing regions in the world. And that's because they adopted ivermectin in early treatment back in August. And if you look at Uttar Pradesh right now, although their cases and deaths are rising, it's almost all driven from a migrant flux from Mumbai, where the outbreak started. But if you look at Uttar Pradesh, they're going to train stations, airports, bus stations. They're testing and treating, and they are controlling the pandemic. Their performance is far better than the rest of India. And so I think you're going to see India also gain control and start to look better.
Dr. Pierre, Kory, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Lenore. Thank you for having me.
On March 31st, WHO updated its living guidelines on COVID-19 therapeutics with a recommendation on ivermectin, stating that current evidence on the use of ivermectin to treat COVID-19 patients is inconclusive. Until more data is available, WHO recommends that the drug only be used to treat COVID-19 within clinical trials. This applies to patients with any disease severity. International Monetary Fund member countries have agreed to clear Sudan's arrears to the institution, removing a final hurdle to the African nation getting wider relief on external debt of at least $50 billion. Hosting a conference for Sudan in Paris, French President Emmanuel Macron also kickstarted the broader debt relief effort, saying his country was in favor of fully canceling the $5 billion it's owed by Khartoum. Sudan is emerging from decades of economic sanctions and isolation under ousted former President Omar al-Bashir. A transitional military-civilian power-sharing government is trying to pull the country out of a deep economic crisis with inflation at over 300% and shortages of basic goods fueled by a lack of foreign currency reserves. Rwandan President Paul Kagame said on Monday that France's acceptance in a report this year that it bore a responsibility for the 1994 genocide in Rwanda marked a big step forward in repairing relations between the two countries. A commission established by President Emmanuel Macron concluded in March that France had been blinded by its colonial attitudes to events leading up to the genocide and bore serious and overwhelming responsibility. Kagame was in Paris for a summit on post-pandemic financing for African nations hosted by Macron. The French president is due to visit Rwanda later this month. The World Health Organization head Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus described the situation in Tigray, Ethiopia as, quote, horrific, very horrific, in rare public remarks on Monday by the Ethiopian on the conflict there. The WHO Director General has been accused by his country's militia of supporting and trying to procure arms and diplomatic backing for Tigray state's dominant political party, which is fighting federal forces. Tedros has denied taking sides in the conflict.
The situation in Tigray, Ethiopia is, maybe if I use one word, horrific, very horrific. 4.5 to almost 5 million people need humanitarian aid. 91% need food aid. And many people have started dying actually because of hunger. And severe and acute malnutrition is becoming rampant.
The government's delegation in Ceuta and a Spanish Interior Ministry spokesman declined to comment further. Around 3,000 Moroccan citizens entered Spain's Northern Africa enclave of Ceuta on Monday, according to the Spanish government's delegation there. This at a time of increased diplomatic tensions between the two countries. Among the migrants, many of whom swam to Ceuta, were around 1,000 minors, according to a spokesman for the government delegation. Spain's Interior Ministry said in a statement that it would increase the security presence in the area and said both countries had recently agreed that Spain would return to Morocco the citizens that would irregularly enter its enclave by water. The government's delegation in Ceuta and a Spanish Interior Ministry spokesman declined to comment further. Somalia's Ministry of Education has for the first time introduced BRAILLE in schools for the country's blind and visually impaired people. Mohammed Kahir reports from Mogadishu.
Hassan Manoor and his classmates are doing last-minute studying before their final national examination next week. The students will be tested on Somalia's first BRAILLE curriculum, developed by the Education Department for students with special needs.
I am looking forward to sit for my final examination, which will be in BRAILLE system for the first time in our country, and I am hopeful to register an excellent performance during the results.
The federal government has a new policy to develop learning programs for students with special needs, and so far it has printed more than 8,600 books in 8 subjects as part of its new education plan.
We started the new project with 3 schools as a model, and then we will expand it to other regions in the country after the assessment and necessary modifications.
The students have reacted positively to the new learning system, but say other challenges remain, like the cost and lack of resources to help students reach their potential.
We have various challenges, including teachers who teach voluntarily in this school without payment, with no motivation, because most parents are poor and they can't afford school fees for their children. But that will not stop our efforts to educate them.
Officials say decades of violence in Somalia have ravaged its once touted education system, and it's still a long way from where it once was. But officials say helping students with special needs like Manoor can no longer wait. Mohamed Kahir for VOA News in Mogadishu, Somalia.
We would like to hear what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the discussion on Facebook. Our address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our broadcast live on Facebook. Please watch and share our show with your friends. Also, check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Still to come, highlights from the Basketball Africa League tournament in Kigali, Rwanda. We'll be right back.
All this week on Africa 54, we are partnering with the BAL to bring you the best of African basketball. Don't miss it. Yeah.
Welcome back to Africa 54. In Basketball Africa League action, Senegal's Asdouane has opened their first round play with an impressive 94-76 win over GS Petroliers of Algeria. Egypt's Zamalek survived a furious first quarter attack by Ferroviario de Maputo of Mozambique to register its first win, 71-55, in the 12-team tournament in Kigali. Our Jackson Vunganyi has the highlights.
GSP shot ahead in the opening minutes with quick baskets by Mohamed Sadiq Touati and early three-pointer by Abdullah Hamdini. But AS Douane caught up quick with under the basket hoop by forward Sheikh Ahmed Kamara. A three-pointer by Mamadou Faye gave AS Douane the lead with 3 minutes before the end of the first quarter. By Faiko Belkoja kept GSP close with 2 points before the baskets by Christopher Gerard Coakley, and Sheikh Bamba Diarra pushed AS Douane ahead with minutes into the second quarter. Mamadou Lamine Diop's dunk pushed AS Douane ahead with 2 minutes before the half. A nifty pass from Alkali Ndour to Christopher Coakley led to an easy basket, followed by a corner three by Sheikh Ahmed Kamara halfway in the third quarter. GSP responded with a Mohamed Arad dunk off a pass from Abdesalam Dekiche, but AS Douane Mamadou Lamine answered with a layup off a pass by Serigne Bamba Gay. A corner three by Faiko Belkoja kept GSP close late in the third quarter. AS Douane led by 5 points 2 minutes into the fourth quarter and stretched their lead to an impressive first win in the tournament with layups by Mohamed Amin Diop. Zamalek opened with a quick lead in the opening minutes before back-to-back baskets by Custodio Muchate, and DeMarcus Holland brought Ferroviario into the game. and Nas Mohamud layup gave Zamalek the lead again. 2 3-pointers and a jump shot gave the Maputo Locomotives a 5-point lead halfway into the second quarter. But Zamalek responded with a 3-pointer and a layup to keep the score a close 34-33 at halftime. The Egyptians started the second half with successive baskets and defensive stops that showed why they are among the tournament favorites. Zamalek's Chinemelu Elonu followed after Michael Fakwade hit a rim and started to open up the game for the Egyptians. A defensive stop by Zamalek and a corner three by Eslam Salem gave the Egyptians a comfortable lead, who pulling away minutes later with a long-range shot by Mustafa Kejo and a resounding block by Anas Mohamud to finish the game with a 71-55 victory.
Stay with us for all the highlights throughout the tournament here on Africa 54. And you can hear the games live on your local VOA FM station or at voanews.com. The rate of anti-Asian hate crimes has soared in the United States since the coronavirus pandemic started in early 2020. International students in the U.S. report isolated incidents. Kathleen Struck has the report.
Most international students in the U.S. are students of color. Amid the pandemic, which started in China, anti-Asian hate crime has spiked 150% nationwide, according to police data. Since March 2020, Stop AAPI Hate, a group that monitors racism against Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders, says it received more than 6,000 reports of hate incidents. Columbia University student June Baek says he came to the U.S. in 2015 from South Korea because of the quality of education.
America offers the best universities, the most renowned ones, and I felt that like going to America, studying there, would open up new opportunities than I would have had if I were to study back in Korea.
While riding the subway last year, he heard a woman begin to shout. That's not unusual in New York City. But he realized it was directed at him.
I tried to not say anything, just look down, just mind my own business. But it got worse and worse. And it became more, it wasn't just any kind of verbal assault. I realized that it was actually directed at me. And I decided to just get off at the next station.
Shootings in March near Atlanta, Georgia, left 8 people dead, including 6 Asian women. While the suspect said his motives were not racial, Asians in the U.S. said the incident has increased their fears. Jessica, a Chinese national from South Africa, graduating from the Parsons School of Design in New York, said news reports of anti-Asian incidents have made her more cautious.
I used to feel really safe in New York, but that hasn't been the case since 2020. For the first time, I feel almost like targeted when I'm walking on the street. It's really sad because I have to avoid going out in the dark. I have to avoid certain streets which are dark. I have to always be very cautious and very aware of my Asian identity.
All the students VOA talk with said they generally feel comfortable on campus and among America's diverse urban populations. They say the experience of living in a multicultural society has been a great lesson.
It's been an amazing journey, especially when I look back. I really got to see so many different cultures coming together, and most importantly, meet friends from different countries, different cultures, and get to know their stories. Really expanded my mind, and I appreciate this kind of freedom for me to explore the world.
But just having Asian features creates anxiety lately.
When I was watching the recent news, I definitely feel really sad to see those attacks happening, not only in New York City, but also in other cities as well. And sometimes I feel a little bit like unsafe when I'm in this kind of situation. I'm lucky because I've been receiving a lot of love and support.
While reports of hate crimes overall decreased 7% last year, likely because of lockdowns, reports of hate crimes against Asians rose nearly 150% in 16 of the largest U.S. cities, according to police data.
You guys suck, go back to your country while you're here in the U.S. and that's pretty much it, but it's been rare one-off occasions, nothing that would make me feel unsafe as per, but I mean, it still sucks when it does happen.
Kathleen Struck, VOA News, New York.
Britain lifted many of its coronavirus lockdown restrictions Monday as infection rates have fallen to their lowest level since August. But as Henry Ridgell reports from London, there are growing concerns over the spread of new mutations of the virus first seen in India.
Off on vacation. These British passengers arriving in Lisbon, Portugal, were among the first to take advantage of the easing of lockdown rules Monday.
Oh, it's just fantastic. The feeling's unbelievable. We've got sun, we've got the people, the beaches, the bars. Can't wait.
Yeah, it's better than being in England. So,
woo! A dozen countries have been put on Britain's green list for travel. Travellers from other countries, including most of Europe and the United States, still face mandatory quarantine on arrival in Britain. Pubs, restaurants, art galleries and theatres in Britain opened their doors Monday to allow customers inside for the first time this year. There were celebrations Monday in London's West End entertainment district.
And the West End is back in business.
But not everyone is enthusiastic about the changes.
Most of the people who are going to be going to the pubs are probably the people that are not vaccinated as well, so it does seem a bit risky.
I wouldn't be surprised if there's another lockdown, quite honestly.
Fueling the concerns is the spread of a mutation of the coronavirus responsible for the surge in cases in India. The city of Bolton is a hotspot. The government has deployed mobile vaccination units and has warned that the spread of the new variant could disrupt plans to end all lockdown restrictions next month.
We're in a race between the vaccination programme and the virus, and this new variant has given the virus some extra legs in that race. But the vaccine will still, we have a high degree of confidence that the vaccine will overcome.
Scientists say Britain is well prepared for opening up.
All the data indicates that vaccination can prevent severe disease induced by this particular variant. So whilst this variant may well be able to infect folk, including folk that have already been vaccinated, it doesn't appear to result in severe disease. The data is still dribbling through at the moment. But I think the concern is, we still have a large proportion of the population unvaccinated, particularly younger people.
Several European countries are easing lockdown measures. Tourists are slowly returning, offering a glimmer of hope for Europe's battered travel industry. Scientists say the relaxation of rules will inevitably lead to more infections. The question is whether the vaccines are now more potent than the virus. Henry Ridgell for VOA News, London.
And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us in Washington, thank you for watching.